tat tivamasi.
And ehihe, asher ehe.
2 phrases.
Just 6 words between them, really.
And you could argue, maybe not even argue, that these are 2 of the most heavy-lifting sentences in the entire history of human consciousness.
Oh, without a doubt. They're
We're
foundational.
doing something, well, maybe a little dangerous today. We're taking these 2 concepts that sit at the absolute bedrock of, Eastern and Western civilization.
Specifically the Indian Upanishadic tradition and the biblical tradition from the Near East.
Exactly. And we're putting them in the ring together.
In the ring is an interesting way to put it. I like that.
Well, here's the thing. I've spent the last few days just buried in our source material for this deep dive, which is this incredibly dense but, wow, fascinating text called The Grammar of Being, 2 Paths to the Absolute. And I have to admit, before I read it, if you'd asked me about these 2 phrases, that thou art and I am that I am, I would have given you the standard, the cocktail party answer.
Which is what's the go-to response?
The usual perennial philosophy vibe, I would have said, oh, they're just saying the same thing.
Right.
East is west, west is east. It's all one big mountain. And these are just, 2 different hikers pointing at the very same peak.
That God is being. I am part of God. It all fits together nicely.
Exactly. Namaste, hallelujah. Let's all go home feeling good about it.
It is a very comforting thought, isn't it? It's symmetrical. It just feels tidy to think that everyone agrees deep down.
But this text, it just completely destroys that comfort. It grabs you by the shoulders and basically says, stop. You are not listening. You're hearing the words, but you're not listening to the grammar.
That's it, exactly. The author of The Grammar of Being argues that if you actually pay attention to the structure, the syntax, the whole mechanism of how these sentences work, they aren't just saying different things.
They might actually be pointing in opposite directions.
That's the thesis, yes.
And so that's our mission for this deep dive. We aren't just doing theology or comparing religions. We are looking at these phrases as 2 different operating systems for reality.
That's a perfect analogy.
2 completely different ways of understanding what a self is, what history means, and ultimately what God even is.
And the stakes are so high here. This isn't just wordplay for academics. The text argues these are, in fact, instructions. They're blueprints for how to be.
Okay, so let's lay it out for everyone listening. What are the 2 contenders, so to speak?
So in one corner, we have the Chandogya Upanishad. It's one of the foundational ancient texts of Vedanta in Hinduism. And the phrase is Tat Tivamasi.
Which translates to, that thou art, or you are that.
Precisely. And the other corner, we have the book of Exodus, chapter 3, Moses at the burning bush, and God gives his name.
Ishia, Asher, Ehai, I am that I am.
Exactly.
And you can see it, right? On the surface, they both seem to be defining God, or the absolute, as pure existence, beingness.
On the surface, yes. But our source makes this critical distinction right at the very beginning. It doesn't call them definitions. It calls them grammars of transcendence.
Grammars of transcendence.
And it says one is a grammar of recognition, the other is a grammar of interruption.
Recognition versus interruption. Okay, that's a strong dichotomy. That's a great place to start. So let's begin with recognition. Let's go to the East. Take us into that Upanishadic moment. This is not a burning bush scenario, is it? It's the opposite of that.
It's the complete opposite. The setting is, it's intimate, it's quiet, it's a dialogue between a father, a sage named Uddalaka, and his son, Phatakatu.
And Phatakatu is a bit of a know-it-all from what I gather.
Oh, he absolutely is. The text is very clear on this. He's just returned from 12 years of formal education, and he is, puffed up with pride.
The classic college grad coming home for Thanksgiving thinking he has all the answers.
Agrees. Precisely. I've learned the Vedas, I know the rituals, I know everything, Dad, don't worry about it. And his father, Uddalaka, sees this immediately.
Yeah.
But notice, and the source really highlights this, he doesn't scold him. He doesn't command him to be humble or tell him he's arrogant. He invites him into an inquiry.
It's a teaching moment. It's pedagogical.
It is. A very gentle one. He asks his son this beautiful, cryptic question. He says, "My dear, did you ask for that instruction by which the unheard becomes heard, the unperceived becomes perceived, and the unknown becomes known?"
And of course, Phatakatu has no idea what his dad is talking about. That wasn't in his textbooks.
Not at all. He's stumped. So Uddalaka begins to teach him. But the method is what's so crucial here. It's not a lecture. He uses analogies from the natural world.
Right, like the salt in the water.
Exactly. He says, "Bring me some salt." He has him dissolve it in a cup of water, and then he says, "Okay, son, now show me the salt." And of course he can't. It's disappeared.
But if you taste the water.
It's salty everywhere. From the top, the middle, the bottom, the essence is present, but it's invisible.
And he does this over and over with different things.
Yes. He talks about bees gathering nectar from countless different flowers to make honey. But once it's honey, the honey doesn't say, "I am from this flower," or "I am from that one." The individual essences have merged into one.
A single unified substance.
And then the most famous one, the tiny seed from a giant fig tree. He has his son cut it open, and there's nothing inside. It's seemingly empty. Yet from that nothingness, a huge tree arises.
And the punchline to every single one of these little experiments, every analogy, is the same phrase.
Yes. He points to that subtle essence of the world, the invisible force that is the saltiness in the water, the honey, the life in the seed. And he turns to his son and he says, "That essence, that subtle reality, tat tivamasi, that thou art shivatakatu."
Wow. So let's unpack the grammar of that moment, as the source calls it. The text says, this is speech approaching its own extinction. What does that mean in practice?
It means the words are not designed to give you new information. If I tell you the capital of France is Paris, I'm giving you a fact you didn't have before. You add it to your mental library.
Right, it's additive.
But here, Uddalaka isn't adding anything to his son's knowledge. He's trying to trigger a collapse, a realization.
A collapse of what, exactly?
A collapse of the perceived distance between the observer and the observed, between the subject and the object. The source calls it an unveiling.
An unveiling.
Think of it like this. You are searching frantically for your glasses. You're tearing the room apart, getting frustrated, angry, and then you happen to catch a glimpse of yourself in a mirror and realize they've been on your nose the entire time.
Okay, yeah, I've done that more times than I'd like to admit.
In that moment of realization, did you acquire the glasses? Did you gain a new object?
No, not at all. I stopped being ignorant. I just realized they were already there.
Exactly. You recognized what was already and always true. That is the Eastern grammar of transcendence. The absolute Brahman is not some external power, some king in the sky you have to obey. It is the deepest truth of your own subjectivity.
So you don't need to go on a quest to find it.
You don't need to go anywhere. You just need to wake up to where you already are.
It's an inward turn. The answer is already in here.
The answer is you, the real you, the self or Atman.
Okay. So that's the vibe. Gentle, internal, a guided realization that you were already home.
Yes.
Now, let's pivot. Let's leave this quiet, intimate teaching moment and go to the desert.
The Sinai Peninsula, Midian.
And this feels like a different genre of movie entirely.
Oh, completely different. If the Upanishad is a quiet, philosophical tutorial, the Book of Exodus is a supernatural thriller.
It's a car crash, as we said.
It is.
So we have Moses, and he is not a proud student. He's a fugitive from Egypt. He's a shepherd. He's just minding his own business on the side of a mountain.
He's living a quiet life in exile. And suddenly, the text says, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames of fire from within a bush. And Moses looks, and he sees that the bush is burning, but it's not being consumed.
And here it comes. The grammar of interruption.
Yes. Moses is literally stopped in his tracks. He decides to go have a closer look. And then God speaks from the bush. But notice the very first thing God says. It's not Moses, look deep inside your heart and find the eternal truth of your being.
No, it's a command. Do not come any closer.
A boundary is set. Immediately, take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground.
I've always been so struck by that line about the sandals. It's so concrete. It's so physical. It's about dirt and feet.
It's incredibly physical, and our source argues this is absolutely vital. Why is the ground holy? Is it because Moses had a deep internal realization about it? Did he project his own innate holiness onto it?
No, not at all. It's holy because the voice from the fire said it was.
Exactly. The holiness is extrinsic. It is declared into being by an other. God establishes a boundary, a distance. I am here, you are there, and there are rules of engagement. Remove your sandals. It is a confrontation from the outside.
And Moses is understandably terrified.
He hides his face. He's afraid to look at God. It's such a stark contrast. In the Upanishads, the ultimate goal is to see, to have the vision of unity. In the Bible, the primal holy reaction is to cover your eyes.
Moses isn't realizing, oh, I am that fire. He's realizing, I am definitely 100% not that fire.
The gap between them is absolute.
And this all leads up to the name. Moses is panicked. He's just been given this impossible, terrifying mission to go back to Egypt and confront Pharaoh. He needs some kind of badge of authority.
He needs credentials.
So he asks, "Who are you?" If I go to the Israelites and they ask me, "What is his name?" What should I say? Who should I say sent me?
He wants a handle, he wants a definition he can use. In the ancient world, knowing a god's name gave you a kind of leverage. You knew their character, what rituals to perform, which lever to pull to get a response.
And God gives him this complete non-answer. Asher, yeah.
I am that I am.
Or sometimes translated as I am who I am.
And here is where the grammar of being source gets really, really sharp. It says, do not mistake this for a philosophical definition of God. He isn't giving a lecture on metaphysics from a burning bush. He's not saying, my essential nature is existence itself, like a Greek philosopher might.
So, what is he saying then?
He's refusing to be named. The source calls it a refusal of categories. It's almost a deflection, a divine act of evasion. Who am I? I am who I am. It creates a kind of closed loop, a circle that you, Moses, cannot enter.
So, if I'm getting this right, in the East, the Great Revelation collapses the mystery. It says the mystery is you. You are that.
Yeah.
But in the West, the Great Revelation intensifies the mystery.
That's perfectly put. It establishes mystery as the permanent condition of the relationship. God discloses his presence. I am here, I am real. But he simultaneously withholds his essence. He keeps his cards to himself.
Okay, so this sets up our two big themes, recognition versus confrontation, intimacy versus awe. But the source text goes even deeper than just the moment of revelation. It talks about the very grammar of being itself. It frames it as identity versus freedom.
This is section 2 of our deep dive, and it's where the implications really start to unfold.
And I want to push back on this a little because even after everything we've said, my brain still wants to say, okay, but aren't they both just saying that God is being? That God is everything?
It is the hardest habit to break because our modern minds want to synthesize everything. But let's look closely at the Eastern view as the source presents it. Identity without remainder.
Without remainder. That feels like the key phrase there.
It is. In the non-dualist schools of Hinduism, particularly Advaita Vedanta, which is built on the foundation of Tattva Asi, the claim is absolutely radical. Brahman, the absolute reality, is the only thing that truly exists. Period.
So what about this table we're sitting at? What is this microphone? What is the person listening to us right now?
In a word, it's Maya.
Which we usually translate as illusion.
And that's a tricky word, so we have to be careful with it. It doesn't mean it's a hallucination, like a pink elephant. If you walk into a wall, you will absolutely break your nose. It is pragmatically real,
okay,
but it is not ultimately real. The classic analogy is the wave on the ocean. The wave has a specific shape, a name, a form, a temporary existence. But what is it made of?
Water.
Just water. The water is the only thing that's actually there. When the wave crashes on the shore, the water remains. The waveness was just a temporary appearance.
So the remainder, the thing that makes the wave different from the ocean's individual identity, is just temporary. It's not fundamentally real.
It's a superimposition of name and form onto the one reality. The source says the entire goal of the spiritual path initiated by Tattva Asi is to realize there is nothing outside the absolute. Even the seeker who is looking for God is God. It's God playing a game of hide and seek with himself.
That's logically very clean, actually. It solves the whole problem of how God relates to the world. He doesn't have to relate to it. He is the world, just in disguise.
It's philosophically very elegant. It satisfies the intellect's desire for unity. But now let's look at the biblical grammar. The source calls it being as freedom.
And this goes back to the translation issue you mentioned earlier, right? The verb tense.
It does. The Hebrew phrase eheash or ehe uses an imperfect verb. It's not a static state of being like I am. It implies ongoing action, movement, a future orientation. Many Jewish commentators and scholars argue it's better translated not as I am that I am, but as
I will be what I will be.
I will be what I will be.
That feels so different. It sounds almost evasive, like a politician dodging a question about future policy.
Or it's a promise, a statement of fidelity. Think about it. If I say I am a podcaster, I have defined myself by a static role, a category. But if I say to you, I will be there for you, what am I defining myself by?
By a future action, a commitment. It's relational.
It is radically relational. The source argues that the biblical God refuses to be a substance or a thing. You can't find him by analyzing the periodic table of spiritual elements. He is defined not by what he is, but by what he does, By his freedom.
The freedom to do a new thing.
He must be able to do a new thing to surprise you. That's the point. You cannot deduce him from first principles. In the Upanishads, you can, in a sense, deduce the absolute by analyzing your own consciousness. If you just go deep enough, you'll find it there. It's a given.
Right.
In the Bible, you can stare at your navel for 1,000 years and you will never, ever find Yahweh. You have to wait for him to show up, to speak, to act in history.
Because he is what the Source calls sovereignly other.
He is free. He is not bound by the laws of your logic or the depths of your soul. He stands outside the system.
This brings us to the part of the text that I found, honestly, the most challenging. Because it's about me. It's about the self.
Section 3, yes. The self as illusion or vocation.
And if these two grammars are true, then the very concept of I means two completely different things.
It does. Let's start by looking at the I in the mirror through the lens of Tattvamasi.
Okay, let's do it.
In Advaita Vedanta, your everyday ego, the thing you call you, your name, your history, your memories, your anxieties, your personality quirks, your favorite flavor of ice cream, what is all that?
The Source uses the word a knot.
A knot of habits, identifications, and narratives. It's a glitch, a fundamental misrecognition. You think you are the wave when you are actually the ocean.
See, that's where I start to get a little bit of vertigo.
Yeah.
Because I kind of like my narrative. I like my memories, even the painful ones. The idea that my entire self is just an error that needs to be corrected. It feels a lot like death.
And that is the intended reaction of the ego. Of course it feels like death to the ego. It's fighting for its own survival. But the promise of the East is that what you are losing is a cage. You're terrified of losing the walls of your prison cell because you've mistaken them for your home.
So liberation is subtractive then. You don't add holiness, you just lose ignorance.
Precisely. You don't become a super person or a perfected version of yourself. You stop being a person altogether in the limited sense. You become the whole. The Source has a beautiful line on this. It says, "The sage doesn't stand before the absolute. The sage rests as the absolute."
But there's no relationship in that statement. There can't be.
How can there be? Relationship requires two. It requires duality. If I am you, I can't love you, I can't talk to you, I can't miss you. I just am you. The distinction has collapsed.
Okay, now flip it. Let's look at the biblical self.
Now, in this grammar, the self is not an error. It's not a knot to be untied. It is a vocation.
A vocation, a calling.
The biblical self is fundamentally the one who is addressed. God calls Abraham by name, Abraham. And what is Abraham's response, the paradigmatic response for the entire tradition?
Here I am.
Hineni. In that response, here I am, the biblical self is born. You become a self not by looking inward, not by introspection, but by answering an outward summons.
The Source brings up the story of Jacob wrestling with the angel. That's such a violent, physical, and strange image.
It is the ultimate counterimage to the eastern drop of water merging with the ocean. Jacob wrestles with this divine being all night long. He gets physically injured, his hip is put out of joint, he gets a new name, and he holds on. He refuses to let go. He demands a blessing.
You can't wrestle with yourself like that.
You absolutely cannot. The struggle itself proves the distance, the otherness. And the Source argues that for the West, this distance, this gap, is sacred. It's not a problem to be solved. It's the space where the most important things happen.
Like love and covenant.
Exactly. It's Martin Buber's famous I-thou relationship. Real life happens in the meeting. If you merge with the other, you absorb them, you destroy them. To love God, God must remain God, and you must remain you.
So one view sees the individual self as a barrier to truth, something to be seen through and dissolved. And the other sees the self as a necessary partner, something to be built up and strengthened to handle the weight of the divine relationship.
That's a perfect summary of the distinction.
But surely, and look, I'm going to try to play the peacemaker here again, surely they have to meet somewhere. I mean, all the great mystics, East and West, they eventually start sounding kind of crazy and incoherent, don't they? Whether it's Shankara or St. John of the Cross, they all finally just throw up their hands and say, words fail, I can't explain it.
And that is what the Source calls the convergence of negation. This is our section 4.
Okay, talk to me about this. The fancy word is apophasis.
It is. It just means unsaying or speaking by denying. It's the via negativa, the negative way.
It's like playing that game 20 questions, but the only answer you're allowed to give is no.
Basically, yes. And both traditions are masters of this. The Upanishads have the famous haunting maxim, neti. Neti.
Not this, not that.
Is Brahman a king on a throne? No. Neti. Is Brahman a brilliant light? No. Neti. Is Brahman pure consciousness or thought? Not even that. Neti. Whatever concept your mind can form of the absolute, you have to throw it away because the absolute is, by definition, beyond all concepts.
And on the biblical side, you have the absolute prohibition on graven images.
Which is the exact same mental and spiritual discipline, just framed as a commandment. You cannot carve a statue of God. Why? Because a statue has limits, it has a shape, it freezes God in time and space. The commandment is essentially saying, do not trust your mental pictures of me, they are all idols.
So they both agree that language and thought will ultimately fail. You can't trap the absolute in a net of words.
They do, and this is where they come closest. But the source brings in a fascinating historical figure here to show just how subtle and persistent the difference remains, even at this mystical peak. It brings in Meister Eckhart.
The 13th century German Dominican friar and mystic.
Yes, and Eckhart is usually the poster boy for so-called Christian non-dualism. He's the guy that modern spiritual seekers quote when they want to say, see? The deep Christians believe in Tat Tivamasi too.
Because you talk about the Godhead, right? This is reality beyond God.
Right. He made this radical distinction between God, the Creator, the Father, the personal being we pray to, and the Godhead, which he called the silent, unmoving ground of all being. He famously said we need to break through God to get to the Godhead. He even prayed, I pray to God to rid me of God.
I mean, that sounds incredibly heretical for his time.
Well, the church thought so too. He was put on trial for heresy. But here is the crucial nuance that the source points out, and I think this is just brilliant. Even Eckhart, in his wildest, most radical sermons about union, doesn't quite go all the way to identity without remainder.
He holds back just a little.
He talks about the soul flowing into God, about becoming one with God, but he never quite says the soul is God. The source describes it as a residue of distinction that always remains. It says Eckhart dances at the edge of the abyss of identity, but he always keeps one foot on the bank of relationship.
The text used a phrase I just loved. It said the distinction remains trembling rather than erased.
Trembling rather than erased. Isn't that beautiful? That is the Western mystical limit. Even in the deepest, most profound union, there is a vibration, a trembling. There is still a two that feels so much like a one, but the very two-ness is what makes the ecstasy of love possible.
And the source also mentioned the English text, The Cloud of Unknowing.
Yes, that anonymous 14th century masterpiece. It advises the contemplative to put a cloud of forgetting between themselves and the world, and a cloud of unknowing between themselves and God. But the ultimate goal isn't to realize I am God. The goal is to allow your naked heart to be pierced by a dart of longing love from God.
Love again. And love always implies two, a lover and a beloved.
Exactly. Even in the deepest darkness of the cloud, there is an I and a thou.
Okay, so we have established these two massive, distinct, and ultimately separate architectures of thought. One of inward recognition leading to identity, and one of outward confrontation leading to relationship. So now we get to the so what question. Because frankly, I'm not a 14th century monk. I'm not living in a cave in the Himalayas or a monastery in France. I have to go to the grocery store. I have to read the news. How does this grammar of being affect how we actually live in history?
This is where the rubber meets the road, and it's our final section. Section 5, Ethics and History, Serenity versus Redemption.
Let's start with the implication of the Eastern view. Serenity.
If you truly deeply download the operating system of Tat Tivamasi, that you are the absolute and the world of difference is Maya, how do you view the world's problem?
Well, if the world of suffering and injustice is fundamentally Maya, if it's an illusion, then the problems of the world are illusory too.
Right. The classic analogy is seeing a snake in a dark room. You are terrified, your heart is pounding, you're paralyzed with fear. What is the solution?
To turn on the light and see that it was just a coiled rope all along.
Exactly. Do you need to fight the snake? Do you need to take the snake to the vet? Do you need to organize a snake rights protest?
No, because the snake never actually existed. The problem was my perception.
That is the logic. If suffering is born of ignorance, the only true and lasting solution is knowledge or enlightenment. This worldview can create a profound and unshakable serenity. It allows you to walk through the fires of life without being psychologically burned.
And it creates a kind of compassion too, right?
Deep compassion.
Yeah.
Because I see that you are suffering horribly from a nightmare, and my deepest wish is to help you wake up.
And this is the big but. The source warns about the potential for metaphysical quietism.
Yes, that's the danger. If the world is a dream, why struggle so hard to change the details of the dream? Why fight for social justice? Why worry about climate change? It's all just a play of shadows. The ultimate goal is to exit the theater, not to rewrite the third act of the play.
That is a very tough pill to swallow when you're looking at real, tangible, historical suffering.
It is the most common critique, but now let's look at the biblical view. Redemption within history.
If God's name is I will be what I will be, and if he meets Moses in a specific place at a specific time, then time itself must be real and important.
Time is the arena of redemption. In the biblical narrative, God doesn't just sit in eternal, unchanging bliss. He hears the cry of the enslaved Israelites in Egypt, and he tells Moses, I have indeed seen the misery of my people. I have heard them crying out, and I have come down to rescue them.
So the suffering is not an illusion to be seen through. It is a violation to be stopped.
It's a violation of the covenant. It is objectively wrong. And because the other is real, because your pain is not my pain, and your oppression is not just a story in my head, your suffering makes a claim on me. I can't just wish it away as my own.
And this leads to a powerful drive for justice, for memory, for historical repair.
The source puts it so powerfully. It says, the cry of the oppressed is not an illusion to be transcended. It is the specific place where God reveals himself.
Wow. That's a massive shift. So I am that I am becomes, in practice, I am with you.
And that tiny word, with, changes the entire texture of reality. It validates the struggle. It validates history. It says that what we do here, in the mud and the blood and the dirt of human affairs, actually matters to the absolute.
So we're left with this profound choice. We have the path of serenity, the deep peace that comes from realizing the tragedy isn't ultimately real. Or we have the path of redemption, the urgent struggle to fix the tragedy because it is horribly real.
That is the fundamental tension.
So, who's right?
A small laugh. You want me to declare a winner in a 3,000-year-old debate between the Vedas and the Bible?
Well, I mean, the source is called two paths. Do they eventually meet at the top of the mountain? Or are we just stuck with two incompatible maps?
The strongest piece of advice from the text right at the end is this. Do not try to blend them.
No spiritual smoothie.
Absolutely no spiritual smoothie. We love to do that in the modern world, don't we? We want the deep, non-dual piece of meditation, and we want the fiery moral certainty of the prophets. We want to be God and have an intimate relationship with God.
We want it all.
We do. But the source warns that if you just stir them together, you ruin the unique genius of both. You get something lukewarm and incoherent.
How so? What do you lose?
Well, if you try to collapse Tuvamasi into the Bible, if you say, oh, Moses just had a non-dual awakening and realized he was God, you lose divine freedom. God is no longer a free, sovereign other. He just becomes a cosmic power source, an impersonal battery. He's not free anymore.
And what if you do it the other way? If you try to bring the biblical gap, the I-thou relationship, into the Upanishads?
Then you lose the absolute release. You lose the profound relief of knowing that at the core of your being, you are safe, you are whole, you are the entire cosmos. If you keep the other in Vedanta, you are never truly free from separation. You never fully wake up from the dream of being a limited self.
So they really are mutually exclusive grammars.
They are different languages designed to do different things. You can't speak French and Japanese at the exact same time using the same words. You have to choose which mode you are operating in.
The text had that beautiful image for this at the very end. It called them two ways of standing before the unanswerable.
Yes, not two answers. Two ways of standing.
And it compared the whole dynamic to breathing.
Inhalation and exhalation. Identity and encounter. Silence and speech.
The source seems to argue that the human soul actually needs both of these postures, just not at the same time.
Think about it in your own life. There are moments, maybe when you are grieving or terrified or filled with self-loathing, when what you desperately need is the Eastern voice. You need to hear. This is not all of you. You are deeper than your history. You are deeper than this pain. You are that.
That's the inhalation, drawing your energy back into the indestructible center.
Exactly. But then there are other moments, maybe when you are feeling powerful or arrogant or complacent, or when you witness an act of profound injustice, when you desperately need the Western voice. You need to hear. You are not the center of the universe. You are summoned. You are responsible. There is a God who is not you and a neighbor who is not you, and they demand that you act.
And that's the exhalation, moving your energy out into the world to do work.
And we get spiritually sick if we only inhale, and we get spiritually sick if we only exhale. The ultimate wisdom isn't in proving one side right and the other wrong. It's in learning when to listen to which voice and when to let both fall silent.
When to let both fall silent. Because at the end of the day, the reality they both point to is beyond the grammar we use to try and trap it.
Exactly. The map is not the territory. Tatium Asi is a finger pointing at the moon. Ehi Asher Behi is another finger pointing at the moon. The mistake is to stare at the finger. The goal is to see the moon.
That is a lot to process. I feel like I need to go sit in a very quiet room for a while.
Mm.
Or maybe go march in a protest. I'm honestly not sure which one yet.
Maybe the wisdom is to do both, just not at the same time.
This has been a heavy one, but a really good one. We've looked at the grammar of being. We've contrasted the self as illusion versus the self as a partner in covenant. And we've explored the difference between waking up from a dream and being interrupted by a fire.
It's a conversation that has been echoing for at least 3,000 years. We're just trying to catch up.
And well, thank you for guiding us so clearly through the grammar. And to all of you listening, whether you're looking in the mirror trying to find God or looking out at the world's burning bushes waiting for your orders, thanks for diving deep with us.